Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete for Anxiety here, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about. Welcome in today's episode. Before we get started today, we need to cover a few things really quick. Let's talk about the Pete for Anxiety Patreon first off. It's only $1, guys. $1. What does $1 get you? $1 gets you into the exclusive episodes I am recording currently. I'm actually focusing on certain different diagnoses of things to show you guys what it actually looks like as it manifests in a person. So why not for $1, judges? Yeah, they said $1. I just checked with them too. See, they said it was okay. It was $1 anyways. Let's also talk about the Oracle Talk Radio Networks app. In case you can't be here live listening to me, watching this video, supporting the show, you can listen to it on the radio app. Why not? It connects us live to our 365 radio. Just go to your app stores and download the Oracle Talk Radio Network. You'll see the big old Oracle Talk Radio Network app logo right on there. Download it. It'll connect you to me, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, to Pete versus Anxiety when I'm live doing my thing right here, informing the world and raising mental health awareness. So where are you going to be? 10 a.m. Of course. Come on. We just talked about this. Pay attention for once. Damn. Do y'all know how to listen? And as always, guys, like, follow, and share the YouTube channel. If you guys like what you're seeing, leave some comments, man. We want to know. I want to know if you like what we're on. You want to be on the show? Let me know. Hit me up at PeteVersusAnxietyPod@gmail.com. And as always, guys, enjoy the show. And by the way, did I mention to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure because some of y'all are hard of hearing in the back, may have to yell loud or get a megaphone or something. But, anyways, let's get today's show started. Y'all have a great one. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome into another exciting episode of Pete versus Anxiety, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about enough. My guest today is the host of the Sucker Punch podcast, the one, the only, Becky Mccoy. How you doing today, Becky?
Good. I'm excited to be here and chat about all of this.
Right? It's always great to have new people come on the show and things like that. So why don't you give everybody a little rundown about yourself?
Wow, where to begin?
She's after that grandstand entrance. I don't know. Let me see.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover. The shortest version is I had my first panic attack when I was in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And things kind of devolved from there. Have always dealt with anxiety and depression, and got to a point in my 20s where I was having 2 panic attacks a day. And I was teaching public school, and so I basically became non-functional. And it was really scary and it was awful. And that's when I started taking meds. And then, another decade later, I discovered that I also had ADHD. And because that had been so unmanaged for so long, that was contributing to all of the anxiety that I was experiencing. Throw in a lot of grief. I lost my husband and my dad within 2 years of each other, and had 2 babies around the same time as those losses. And yeah, mental health is kind of the greater theme of my life.
Right? Jeez. Wow. So your husband, your dad within 2 years. I'm so sorry. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then you had the babies around that same time, and
Yep.
And that's rough. Like, it's babies in general are just tough, man. I remember when we had my ex-wife and I had twins. Woo, boy, let me tell you, sleep wasn't existent at that point because they were in the NICU for the first couple months, so we had to go up there. I was working nights already, so I'm working all night, getting off, going up to the hospital, and I don't think for the first 2 months I slept maybe 2-3 hours a day at least. That's it, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, having a newborn is enough to throw any mental health that you may have had off of its, center, and throwing on top of that just life getting turned upside down. It was a really rough time.
Oh, I bet. There's no way. There's no way not to say any lays to that because you lost your dad and then you lost your husband, and it's just like, and then you got these babies, and it's like they're gonna ask where dad is, and then that conversation is gonna have to happen, and
Yeah, and it's just a series of one of my kids when they were really little, with the pediatricians, and I had a lot of conversations about the different developmental moments when kids start to realize that grief is real, and just kind of things to look out for. And it was, the first milestone is like 6 or 7, and at age 2 or 3, one of my kids came running into my room crying, "Why does everyone else have a dad and I don't?" And it's just like, I'm not prepared to answer that question.
It's like, I don't know if you're ready to handle that answer there.
Yeah, I
It's
would
like,
also like to know because everybody else has a dad and I don't, right? Like, so yeah, it's been a lot of years of really struggling, but then figuring out what helps and starting to prioritize those things.
yeah, for sure. Whatever makes it easier and helps you deal with the situations and things like that. And not to mention, you said you had ADHD was undiagnosed for a bit. So like you have all these things going on, you're not even sure what's going on, and then you have to deal with the number one question: why does everyone else have diabetes? It's like,
Yeah,
okay, deer in headlights. Look now, shit.
uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. She's like,
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
how to tell you this.
I think I told them, I was like, I can't, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so hard with kids, man. It's like, what age you can start really telling them certain things. Cause, I know they learn things at a younger age and they know a
Yeah,
lot more than most people give them credit for.
yeah, for sure. And
And
I've always tried to be really honest and like
yeah.
straightforward about everything, which I mean, that so my husband died 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of these conversations over the years and they seem to be really comfortable talking about it, which
Yeah.
is huge because I do a lot of like mental health advocacy and in grief spaces and whatnot. And people
Yeah.
are really afraid to talk. I mean, as you know, people are afraid to talk about
Hmm.
mental health to begin with.
They're
And
afraid
then,
to talk about a lot of subjects. Suicide is one
yeah,
big one that shuts everybody down. I
yep,
mean, I mean, grief, loss itself is hard because it's like, in that scenario, what do you say to somebody in that point?
yeah,
It's like, and a lot of people want to go start telling them what their problems are, but they don't want to hear about that. They're like, we don't hear about that shit. I don't care right now. I just had
yeah,
lost. And I'm sure you can relate to this though. My favorite phrase I like to say a lot of times with Jim Ross, the wrestling announcer guy, he said when he lost his wife, this girl, that lady had come up to him and started like blabbing about her own problems. He said, listen, no offense, I don't give a fuck about your problems. I just
yep,
lost my wife. I
yep.
don't want to hear about it. And it's like, yeah, they don't want to hear about that.
Yeah, yeah, and, people do their best and they really wanna say something comforting, but what they
Yeah.
tend to say is the thing that comforts themselves
Yeah.
and not
So
that comforts the griever.
let me ask you this question then. Since you've been on that side, what would you give someone like helpful? Like say someone's saying, "Hey Becky, what do I do in this situation? I just had somebody I lost." What tips would you give them that way they could better handle the situation and not, come off as they're worrying about themselves?
Yeah, so I always encourage people, if you don't know what to say to someone who's experienced a loss, just say, "Hey, I don't know what to say. This is
Yeah.
awful." And because from the griever's perspective, yeah, I don't know what to say either. So,
Right.
like, at least
Exactly.
we're all being honest about the fact that this is weird and awkward and awful.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I I think that's just the biggest thing is you don't have to have the right thing to say. And
Okay.
really releasing yourself from that pressure is huge.
Yeah. Because it's always like, oh, what do I say in these situations? And you're just like, well, just say you don't have an idea what to say. It's okay to be honest at this
Yeah,
point. And it's I mean, it makes sense, though, you think about it, because like, that's a hard subject to talk about is death itself,
yep.
because some people take it better than others. And then suicide as well is another topic that no one wants to talk about. Like, every time you hear somebody talk about it, they're like, "Okay, I'm out. See ya."
Yeah, I work for a nonprofit who does grief support and suicide prevention and awareness. And yeah, one of the things we just keep saying to people, especially when it comes to suicide, but also with grief, is like you have to talk about it
Yeah.
because that is the only way that we can continue to destigmatize it and we can't communicate to people that suicide is a symptom of
Yeah.
something. It is not, its own separate thing. And so uh you can only help people grow in their understanding when you talk about it.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question about that too. Okay. When it comes to suicide, I know a lot of people
Mhm.
are uncomfortable with the subject.
Yeah.
What could you tell them to help them better, like, say, I'd make it easier for them? Like, say, hey, my friend came to me. He's saying these things like he's not sure he wants to take his life, or he doesn't feel like, it feels like he's a burden to people. Start saying the obvious signs that something's not right there. What
Mhm.
would you tell someone to do in that situation?
Um, it is really important to take people seriously when they
Mhm.
say things like that, because a lot of times, I work with high schoolers and they often would be like, I failed my test, I want to kill myself. Like, nope, absolutely not. Like, we're not joking about that. We're
It's like, "Nope,
only no, and I
red
have
flag."
like, yeah, I direct a high school musical, and I have like leapt over chairs and run across the auditorium to like squash that conversation.
Yeah.
And so, starting with take it seriously every single time. And that the idea is, I train people in QPR, suicide prevention. It's kind of like CPR, like you
Mhm.
step in until the experts get there kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and the big idea is that when someone says something along the lines of, I want to hurt myself, I don't want to live anymore, I wish I could go to sleep and never wake up, it's, you ask them, preferably directly, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Are
Yeah.
you thinking that you want to die? Because again, when you get things out in the open and just say it like it is, most of the time people are relieved that someone sees them and are willing to accept help, and you get help by bringing them to their, calling their therapist with them to get them an appointment. If you don't know what to do, you don't have any connections, there's a suicide hotline, 988, you can call or text.
Mhm.
Whether it's you're struggling, or somebody that you know is struggling, or you just don't know how to handle a situation, the people that answer are equipped and trained to help you. Um, so it
Yeah.
could just be like, my friend just seems really depressed and I'm really scared and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And they'll help walk you through that.
Oh, it's awesome though. Everybody now, and I know I remember that someone had said they changed it from a full 1-800 number to 988 because it was easier to
Yep.
dial just that.
Yep.
And that made me laugh a little bit. I was like, well, why didn't we just do that sooner? But
Yeah.
anyways, but that's great though, because I've had to suggest that to a couple people. Like, listen, if this is really what you're thinking,
Yep.
988 is where you need to go, man. It's like
That's right.
I can listen to what you're saying, but I'm not an expert. I have no idea what else to say in this situation. I
Yep.
didn't tell him that part, obviously. I'm ad-libbing part of it, but I suggested to him, hey, listen, 988, man, if you're really thinking about this, these guys are trained to handle this. Like, I'll listen if you want to tell me something. I'll more than welcome listen to what you're saying, and I'll
Yep.
validate the fact I'm hearing what you're saying.
Yep. Absolutely.
And a lot of people just are so excited after that because someone actually wants to listen to what they have to say. To me, it's just like, all right, I'm listening. What's up? Talk to me, and they're just like, to tell you what the problem is. And a lot of times that's all they want is to be heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And then like I love it though when that conversation comes up and everybody just kind of throws in, oh, never mind, time to get out of this conversation. I'm done. It's like
Yeah.
it makes me laugh because it's like it's a conversation. What do you mean, man? Like this is things that happen. People deal with these things, and then it's like, oh well, I didn't know what he was thinking because you didn't want to listen. Let's
Right.
be honest here. You didn't want to listen to what they had to say because
And
what?
like, we're just so, um we don't talk about allowing ourselves to be uncomfortable,
Yeah,
right? Like, just because a conversation is uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong,
yeah,
or just because it's awkward doesn't mean you should avoid it. And so
hmm,
learning and practicing to sit with and stay in those awkward conversations is, I mean, that's how you build friendships. That's how you um work through conflicts, that in any relationship, right? Like, you
yeah,
have to hang in those awkward conversations. And when you it's not that they become comfortable, right? Whenever I've had conversations about suicide with
yeah.
someone, it's never comfortable. Like, I'm never like, man,
Right, because
I'm
you don't know what they're
so
gonna do
glad
next.
I'm here
Yeah,
right now, right? But I can recognize, like, oh, this is really uncomfortable for me, but it's more important that I stay and engage.
exactly. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you say that though, because it is, you got to kind of ride the storm. And I say the same thing when it comes to people that have like addictions and stuff. I was telling a friend
Mhm.
that I was like, listen, either you're in or you're out. You're not half foot in this thing. You need to either be 100% in this or get the out now because there's your options. And I was straight up with it. I was like, after a lot of people I've been interviewing and things I've been talking about and hearing about all this stuff and learning more about it, I'm like, this is your options. A, get in this shitstorm and get ready for a ride, or get the hell out of it now because you can't just leave them halfway through
Yeah,
because you're not going to earn that trust back again.
yeah, yep.
And it's just crazy though that people just don't seem to understand that. They're like, oh, I think I'm ready, and then they get in it and it gets brutal. And it's like, well,
Uh,
this is what we try to prep you for.
huh? Yeah, or people have ideas. Like, so I was diagnosed with ADHD in my mid
Yeah,
30s, and um, looking back on childhood and young adulthood, a lot of the conflict with my family growing up was because they thought that my inability to, keep my room clean or stay organized or any of these things was a sign of disrespect or that I
yeah,
didn't care, right? And it took a lot of conversations to start to kind of get on the same page and me recognize how it appeared to them and them recognize that what was happening on the outside was not a reflection of what's happening on the inside in the way that they had assumed.
yeah,
But it took them being willing to acknowledge that maybe there is something different happening than I
yeah.
expect. And those were really hard, painful conversations.
Yeah,
Um,
because
but
nobody
they're worth
wants to
it.
admit they're wrong or admit that they weren't seeing these things, but they weren't like that. Things have changed since back then, though. We got to remember now. Now we have more education than we did before, and a lot of times it's some stuff gets misdiagnosed sometimes, and it just
Sure.
happens. I mean, we don't have enough information at that time, and as you go through, it turns out that it may be something different what you originally thought it was too.
Yep.
And that's the crazy part is just like when you come talking to a lot of people, it's like when you look back, you start noticing those little things. Like when I got a diagnosis, I was just like, I started noticing certain things because someone had asked me that question, said, has anyone ever told you you have ADHD or ADD? I'm like, and they started stating the facts like, oh, we like to go on these long sessions of just random thoughts process of things you just come out with randomly. And I started like noticing these things. And
Yeah.
when you really start analyzing it, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, okay, thanks for being on the spot, guy. I appreciate it. Screw you too, all right?
Well, it was funny because 5 or 6 years ago, there was a trend on TikTok of all of these women in their 30s and 40s getting diagnosed with ADHD because in the 80s and 90s, when we were in school, only boys got ADHD, right?
Yeah.
And so, because girls and women present differently,
Hmm.
it just wasn't caught. And I was talking to my sister, and I just said, I think this is so cool. Like, it is so fun watching these women start to really understand themselves better. And what's really funny is I do a lot of the things that they've said have helped them, but I don't have ADHD. And my sister started laughing. And she was like, actually, I think you maybe need to talk to
It's
somebody
like,
about that.
right?
um,
You might want to talk to someone.
Yeah, and so we still laugh about that because but it's true. And I did really well in school. So nobody people are like, but you did well in school. You can't have ADHD. Sure I can. Like, that was my hyper focus. That was my happy place. And
Yeah.
being overly organized and overly in control was how I managed my symptoms. And then it took losing my husband and having a newborn and a 2-year-old all on my own and all of these things together. And I could no longer manage on my own and everything fell apart.
Yeah.
Um, and then people misget. And then I started to appear to be exactly what people expect someone with ADHD to be like.
Right. You know what do I think of too when they ask you that question? It's like, remember, you ever see that movie? What is it? Accepted, the one that the guy who makes the fake college, and that one guy comes in, the little blonde dude.
Yes.
He's like,
Yep.
okay. He sits down for 2 seconds, gets up. All right, well, that was awesome. I had a great time. It just takes off. I'm like, listen, you wonder what Pete looks like on a lot of caffeine? That's it right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like one of my buddies I work with, I start drinking like an energy drink, so he's like, oh God, help us all. Help us all. It's about to go, he's about to go off the rails. I'm like, yep, here I go.
Yep.
And then it's
Watch
like
it
when I've had
happen.
too much, you can just see me start twitching. And
Uh-huh.
I had a red line once too, and he was like, "Oh my God," he goes, "God doesn't love us right now," is what he told me. He's like, I said, "What do you mean, man?" He goes, "You got a red line. You know what those do if you drink half of those?" I'm like, "I don't know. We're about to find out. I haven't tried one."
Yeah.
He said, "Help us all. It's going to be a bad night."
Oh, no.
He's like, "You're all over the place," and I'm like, "I know, man. I already am all over the place now. What are you talking about, man? I'm 20 different places ahead of
Yeah.
you."
Yeah.
He's like, "You kept telling me you could taste color." I'm like, "I probably could at that point, man."
Yeah, truly.
It's like I have hypersense now.
Oh man.
Yeah, and it's like I have anxiety and I have depression, and it's like so the caffeine fired up the anxiety too. So it's like, oh no, I thought I was having a. At one point, I thought I was gonna have an anxiety attack because my heart would start racing. And I'm like, okay, I'm good now. Back into this again.
That's real though. So after my husband died, a bunch of friends and I ran a half marathon in his
Yeah,
memory. And I was always an anti-runner.
yeah,
So when a friend asked me if I wanted to do it with her, I said, well, maybe I'll do it if this other friend does it with us, knowing that she would say no. So right, an easy out, except she said yes. And so I was kind of stuck. And so I did the training and I kind of started to enjoy running. Like I
yeah,
didn't hate it anymore.
yeah.
Um, my husband was a runner. Like he would run 6 miles a day if he could have, and it
Jesus,
was
yeah,
easy for him, right? Like he loved it.
yeah,
And I still don't understand that. But when it came to the day of the race, I think it was like 3 miles, maybe it was 5 miles in, because the adrenaline had started to kick in. Most people experience that as a runner's high, and it's
yeah.
this great feeling. But my body was like, "Oh, we're anxious? Okay." And, so I had panic attacks for 7 miles. Like, it was
Oh no,
I was ready to
God.
quit because it was so miserable, and my friends were like, "Absolutely not. You're doing this. You're finishing, like, we did all this training. You're gonna do it." And we did, like, we did finish.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but, and I get to the end, and I had a friend who had coached me through the whole thing. She's like, "How was it? Can you like, are you so excited to do it again one day?" I said, "Absolutely not. That was terrible. It was the worst thing I've ever done in my whole life."
The second half was a terror run. You don't understand what it was.
Yeah, and just recognizing, oh, when my adrenaline gets going like that, my body is always going to misinterpret that as a panic attack.
Yeah.
Um, and
Well, at least you
being
know what your
gentle with
triggers are, though.
myself.
That's always good too. Once you start figuring out what triggers you, how
Yeah.
you can better attack those triggers and things like that too.
Yep.
Like I've had somebody have a PTSD moment, man. It was the craziest moment ever because it was
Awful.
just a blink second. And I'm like, I try to tell people like, listen, once that happens, your loved one or whoever's there, they're not there. They can't tell you're there. They're going into mode. They're going into fight or flight mode, man. And get ready because it's a wild ride. Like I like it was a horrible situation. It ended up getting kind of wild, but it was like it's the first time I've ever seen it in person, and it was just like the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. To me, it was just crazy because I was just like, "What the hell's going on?" And then I
Yeah.
realized what had happened, and I was like, "Oh shit,
I
this is what happened."
Yeah, I had always kind of joked after my husband died, because he'd only been sick for like 3 months, and
Yeah,
the way that his doctors handled his case was really poorly, and he
yeah,
was also a physician, so it was kind of insult to injury. Like, really, you're going to treat your colleague this terribly?
that's
Um,
crazy. He's a physician, and they still come on
yeah,
now.
so it
Damn
was
it.
so frustrating, and, like, I know
Yeah,
so many wonderful physicians, and, like, he had had cancer earlier in our relationship, and his oncologist then was wonderful, like,
yeah,
but it was just so traumatizing, and then he died, and then I had a baby, and right, like, all of these things, and so I kinda always joked, like, "Oh, I probably have PTSD," and then I ended up seeing a therapist, um, who most of his work was with combat PTSD veterans. And he said, "No, actually, like you are responding to everything in your life exactly identically to
yeah,
someone with combat PTSD," which like that was in some sense hard to hear because know my husband was in the military. Like we've known quite a few people who have really had seen and
yeah,
lived through difficult things and that like ugh, I don't want to be compared to that because my thing is terrible, but it's not that.
yeah,
That's like so many leagues beyond
yeah,
the trauma that I've experienced. But it was also really helpful to put into perspective, "Oh, no, what I dealt with was terrible."
yeah.
Like, and it's okay to say that it was terrible and that it is really turned everything upside down.
Right? Because that's not what you're expecting to hear. He does mostly combat, and he's like, "Well, you're basically on the same lines as this," and you're like, "No, no, no, I don't
Yeah,
want to hear that. It's
right.
hard."
But then it started to make things make sense. My sister
Yeah,
was in college at the time and she played volleyball, and I couldn't get through a volleyball game without having a panic attack
yeah,
because all of those people and the loud sounds, and my body was just unable to process anything beyond just survival sensory things.
yeah, yeah.
And so once I started taking the PTSD part of it seriously and working to help my nervous system, get back to balance, it really made a huge difference.
Well, it's awesome to hear though. That, I mean, you at least got that figured out too, because I know it's hard when you're going to denial because you're like, no, I don't want to be in that same category with people, But
Yeah.
it's that bad that it's right up there with the like somebody in combat. And like my first ever show we recorded was a Monday, September 15th. I had a veteran of 22 years on, Teddy. He was telling me that his situation was he was over the pond doing something, and he was in an area where this Humvee got blown. I'm talking flipped over, action movie
Oh,
type stuff. He said that he was out cold for 15 minutes. And he said he had to literally drag himself out from the Humvee and things, and it was like he knew he had something happen. So when he
yeah.
came back, though, they said they did a psychological test and they said he was okay. And he's like, "Are you sure? Did you look at my results?" And they're
Uh,
like, "No, we looked at you." They did it. That was the thing. They didn't look at his new
yeah.
results. And this poor guy, he was telling me that it's so bad that for him to go to the store and come back, that
Yeah.
drains him right there, just doing
Yep.
simple things. And it was
Mhm.
hard to hear. It was like, man,
It's
this poor
awful.
guy. And it's awful too, because he's just like, and you could see him, he started getting real emotional too when he's talking about it. He's like, and it was just like, man, I was like, I want y'all to see this is real. This is what someone deals with PTSD, as it's going
Truly.
on.
Like,
And it's crazy.
there were so many family functions, like, in those, like, first 5 to 7 years
Yeah.
that I didn't go to, that my mom had started to say, like, "Hey, I think you're gonna lose those relationships entirely if you don't, start re going to things."
Yeah.
RSVPing, yes, right? And I just told her, I was like, "I understand, but I can't." Like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll have to deal with that later, but I, like, actually cannot do that
Yeah.
right now. And now I can. Like, I went one of my kids had a district-wide band concert. It was the middle school and the high school all together in a gymnasium full of people playing band music, right? And I put in my earplugs and I sat at the top of the bleachers, and I didn't once have this feeling of, "I need to get out now." Um,
That's
and
awesome though.
yeah, because 7 years ago, that I would not have been able to do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy though. So let me ask you, how did the podcast come up? I know a lot of people always tell me too. By the way, if you have people come and tell you that, oh, I'm going to start a podcast too, then you
Yeah,
tell them what it's like to run one, and they're
like,
just like, yeah, I don't know about that anymore.
yeah, I've actually been on hiatus for a couple of years, and I'm
Oh,
about to get
really?
going again.
There you
Yeah,
go.
well, I went back to grad school, and then COVID happened, and I was a single mom with 2 little kids, right?
Yeah.
Like something has gotta go on the shelf. Um, Basically, I've been writing about grief and mental
Mm-hmm.
illness, and just thinking there are so many stories, that need to be shared,
Mm-hmm.
and what's the best way to do that? And so I thought about doing a blog series, but then that would require me doing committing to editing, because not everyone has, writing skills, or,
Yeah.
they're not professional writers, right? So I would have to take on a lot of the burden, and I wasn't really willing to do that. Um, and I thought about doing videos, but then I'd have to edit videos, and that takes me forever. It just like is not straightforward for me. And so I finally, this was back in, I think, the beginning of 2017. So
Yeah.
this is when normals like us, right, are just starting to get into podcasting. And
Right.
I was like, well, this would be great because we're just going to sit down and have a conversation. Like, I'm not putting together this American Life. We're just going to sit and chat, and production value does not need to be high.
Yeah.
And so I just started asking friends, like, hey, just can we talk about this one really hard moment in your life? And then I started having people say, hey, I have a story I'd like to share with you. And
Mm-hmm.
then I had writer friends who were coming out with books related to the topic, and so I invited them on, and it just kind of grew from there. And it's been really wonderful to help people see that yes, things can be absolutely awful and terrible,
Yeah.
um, but that doesn't mean that there's not hope, and that doesn't mean that healing isn't an option. um, so this next season series that I'm working on right now is about spiritual practices for grief, mental illness, or mental health, and burnout. And it's kind of come out of my own research and exploring just what are different things that kind of connect mind, body, spirit, that connect
Mm-hmm.
you to the world around you, to the people around you, to yourself. If you believe in the divine, whether you call that God or the universe or
Yeah.
higher power, what are the things that we do to connect, that also facilitate mental health, and
Yeah.
that help us kind of realign our rhythms and lives, in ways that are for our good, and help us, um, kind of continue to pursue that
Yeah.
well-being.
Yeah, see, I have a there's a couple people I'm thinking about to say the names of them that I matched up with them through where we matched up at, and they're spiritual. The woman I talked to yesterday, Sherriana, man, me and her were having a real great conversation about just that. The something a higher power. And she was talking about a spirit. She just called it spirit, and
Mhm,
said that spirit's what channeled through her when she was writing these things. And she has
mhm.
like 11 plus books and all these things. I was just like, dude, I'm like, your resume is beyond impressive at this point. Whoa. And she's like,
Yeah,
yeah, and she was telling us about it. And there's a moment though when we were talking, she was reading an excerpt from the book, and all of a sudden, I can't tell you, it was just like, it feels like, you like your foot falls asleep, that
yes.
tingle feeling. I had to wash over me. Everything
Yeah,
around me just went silent, and I
mhm,
just completely focused on what she was saying. It was so crazy because
yeah,
it was all that just, and she was like, yeah, I think that spirit talking to you. I'm like, I don't know what that was, but I'm telling you right now, it's something, and I felt it like there,
yeah,
so I think that's really cool though. The spiritual thing really interests me. And I've had a couple people on that were spirit based and things like that, and different Reiki masters and things like that.
mhm,
And it's always so interesting to hear their different perspectives of things, because it's like there's something there.
yeah,
It doesn't matter what you give it a label as, it's still that thing that's there. God, whatever you want to call it, or you want to be,
mhm,
the Indians had 15 different gods for that one.
yep,
The Greeks, the idea concept that it's just something there, no
yep.
matter how you look at it. So,
Yeah, and it's been really interesting. I grew up in a pretty high demand religious setting
yeah,
where, we don't talk about mental illness because
right.
probably just a lack of faith anyways. And, we don't talk about, certain things, and you must believe this, and you go to church and you study your Bible and all of these things. And I actually did end up going to seminary, and part of that was to explore how communities can, encourage healthy spiritual lives and healthy faith. And through that process, I realized, oh, wait a second, you know, even if I am still a Christian, or, I'm talking with people who are Christians, there are so many more spiritual practices than going to
Hmm.
church and studying your Bible. And when we demand that those are the two most important ones, it's ableist. It tells people who can't get to church, or who can't read, or who can't process intellectual information, that they don't belong. And I can't believe in a God or a divine being that supports that. Like, I'm out if that's the case. And so I just started exploring more and more. Oh no, there are all these ancient practices,
Yeah,
um, from Christianity and beyond, that allow you to connect on spiritual levels with other people, with the divine, and as I explored that, I just started experiencing life in this incredibly different way.
right.
And so I actually have a book coming out on that
Oh, okay.
process of exploration, um, and just how these different practices have transformed me. So kind of what started out as a curiosity has turned into the work that I'm doing.
Right. And so a book, you say, huh?
Yeah.
What do we
Yep.
have a title for the book?
Well, the working title is Slow Work, and the
Okay.
idea that we um our lives, our spiritual lives, our mental health, all of these things are a process, and you have
Mm-hmm.
to let them take the time that they need. You cannot say, by December 1st, I'm going to be mentally healthy
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm going to do these 3 steps, and this is how it's all going to turn out fine.
Those,
Like
those videos crack me up though. It's like I'm gonna do these things. Okay, listen, I'll sit back and watch you do those things. Let's see how
I
far you
hope it
achieve it.
works for you,
Right?
right?
Like, don't get me wrong, I'm being positive. I
Yeah.
hope you do it, but let me just watch and see what
Yeah,
happens. I
prove
kind
me
of feel
wrong.
like, you know.
Yeah. But putting yourself in positions to experience the process of these different practices is what
Yeah.
is truly transforming. Like, and the title came to me. One of the chapters is on walking labyrinths, those
Yeah.
big round maze looking things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only one path to the center, and there's only the same path back out to the exit. And so the
Yeah.
idea is you don't make a single choice. You
Yeah.
just walk. And you walk
Mm-hmm.
slowly and you breathe. You can repeat a mantra. You can just kind of let your mind wander, right? There are lots of different ways to do it. And as I was walking this one, I had done about 4 or 5 previously, and they'd all been like a disaster.
Yeah.
Like wind had blown like leaves and everything all over the path, so I couldn't see the path, or like it hadn't been maintained, so the rocks that were lining the path were scattered all over, or
Right.
all these things. And so I'm finally at this really nice one that had been well maintained, and I'm walking and I'm getting frustrated, like, why am I not feeling changed, right? Like, why
Yeah.
is this miraculous moment? Um, and this phrase just kept coming over and over. It's because it's slow work. It's slow
Yeah.
work. It's slow work. You just have to keep trying and let it unfold as it will. And I don't like that answer because I would like some more guaranteed predictable outcomes,
Yeah.
but I I've really challenged myself to sit with that and try and learn to believe that.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome
Um,
though.
yeah,
So do you know when you have a date when it's gonna be coming out at all by
it
chance? Are we still in
yeah,
the process?
it'll be coming out in this next winter, so December 2025 to March 2026.
I'll definitely check it out for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll be good, and then
It sounds like something I'm very interested in. Like I said, after yesterday's conversation,
uh-huh.
it makes me more interested than ever before because with that whole experience I was
Yeah,
having and things like that. It's just hard to explain to people, but if you
truly.
understand it, you understand it. It's just
Yeah.
like it was so surreal, man. Because I'm sitting there and then you just see me go completely blank for a few minutes while
Uh-huh.
she's talking to me,
Yep.
and I'm just like zoned in, like I'm staring at the screen.
Yeah. I
It's like I
believe it.
told her about it afterwards. It was intense though, but it wasn't like intense in a bad way. It was intense and like wow, like because I've always had this feeling, like I sense energy really well, and I've talked to a couple energy special people and they call them so the energy
Mhm.
alchemists and things like that have come on,
Yeah.
and we were talking, and it's a heightened sense of energy, and I could tell like when I get close to people I could sense their energy. So like if I feel like they're up to no good and I don't like them, I get a bad vibe. I'm like, yeah, I really don't like them, but I can't tell you why. But I could
Mhm.
just say that, like, and then when they go away, that feeling goes away. When they come back, it's like, yeah, I don't like this
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really hope that this book will give people the opportunity to explore on their own what's meaningful to them,
Yeah,
right? Because it's not me saying, "Oh, you have to do this if you wanna
yeah.
feel this." It's just like, "Well, here's what happened when I tried it, and here's how you can try it." And
I think
so
that's a great perspective, though, that you're going it based on. You're not telling. You're like, hey, why don't you try it yourself and see what happens? Because I feel like too many people are doing the sheep mentality type thing. They're always following somebody else's thing. It's like it's cool, no, but why don't you try it for yourself and give your own opinion on what happened? It's cool and all that so and so did it or this person did it. All right, that's called they did it. But is that really going to work for you though? Let's look at the practical application. If it doesn't line up with you, that's okay. you're your own person. That's the great thing about being human. We're all different people. Now, if we were the same, we'd all be sheeps and,
Right, right.
lining up in a line. It's just not how it works. Like,
Yeah, and like I'm brutally honest that there's at least one practice that I've tried and I keep trying. And like sometimes it feels nice, but for the most part, it's just not for me, right?
yeah. And that's
But
okay. That's the great
right,
thing about it. It doesn't have to be for you. And that's the great thing about
exactly.
this show. So I bring other people in here and everybody sees different things. It's like, okay, well, if that's not for you, well, how about this? And there's
Yeah,
all these different people have different things they do, and something's gonna grab onto, it's just like, everybody's so worried about therapy, and it's like therapy's not the end all be all, man. There's tons of other things out there you should try, like
right. And
sound
there are
healing and
so many
everything
different
else.
kinds of therapy, right? Like
Hmm.
just because you don't get along with one therapist doesn't mean therapy's not for you. Like it's like
Yeah.
dating, which I hate to say because I hate dating, but like
Girl, let
you,
me tell you, I have stories for days of the dating
yeah,
scene before I met my wife. It was an interesting experience, needless
yeah,
to say.
but it's the same. You gotta find somebody that you click with, and
Yeah.
you have to be using some kind of like modality or like therapeutic practice that works for you, and that can be a really frustrating process.
Yeah, no, and I get that too. It's just like it's crazy because it's like there's just I it was fucking weird. I'm gonna be honest, it was weird. Like dating in your 30s and 40s is horrible. Like
Amen.
it's just horrible, because then it's like, you were with this other person for so long. Because I was with a narcissist for 15 years. I didn't realize it because I was in that deep. It was like
Yeah.
they had the hold on me, but everyone else around me saw something wrong or was trying to help me.
Yep.
I think one friend actually almost went completely nuts trying to help me because he was like, I just couldn't do it anymore, man. I had to get out of there. He's
Yeah.
like, I tried to help you. I saw that you were in there too deep, and then she just,
Yep.
and I was like, yeah, man, I don't. But now I deal with that narcissist because she's my baby mom, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I start noticing things now that I start analyzing more things that she says. I don't
Mhm.
trigger to what she says. I'm watching it and I'm very careful with what I say.
Yeah.
And they get so mad. Like this morning, we are having a conversation,
Really.
and I just kept commenting these like one word sentences, or saying a few things in a sentence, not even really giving much. And they're just like getting so mad. They're just trying so hard to get me upset. And I'm just sitting there going, okay, that's cool. And then like,
Uh-huh.
it's great because before old Pete would have just went all right off the handle, like, all right,
Yeah.
cool. You want to go to text for? Let's do this. Da, 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 da.
That's right.
It's like, now it's like, no, I'm analyzing things more, and I'm looking at it from a different perspective. And it's great. It feels great because now she don't have the same control she did before,
Yeah.
but like, I
Yep.
was a puppet, and it was horrible.
Yeah. I've
It,
had a few friends in similar situations over the last few years finally being able to get out. And it's taking a long time for them to relearn,
oh my god, yes. If they
right?
want a good
How
book to
to,
read, what is it? Bridemaid by Mia Hanks is a really good one because she talks about her marriage to a narcissist, man. And me and Mia
okay.
were talking. She's been on the show. So Mia
Okay.
has been on the show. We were talking. Her story and mine almost line up a little bit of what she dealt with. And it was
Wow.
so crazy because
Yeah.
I was like, damn, are you reading my mind? And like, because I'm thinking that's the same thing I dealt with. And she's got a really great book. She sent me actually a copy of it. She signed it for me too. And I was so excited. It's like I joke with her. I was joking. Hey, listen, if you signed it, it'd be awesome. I'd really appreciate it. Because she's like, oh, I'll
Uh-huh.
send you a copy of the book to read. And it was like, okay, sure, why not? Just actually finished reading another one. This will blow your mind too. How about this one? Okay, so I told somebody what I was reading, and I'll show it because it's right here. Because I did the interview with the person yesterday. This book is called "The Mastectomy." The mastectomy I've always wanted. Okay,
Okay.
it's a memoir about breast cancer. So now you got a mail telling you that they're reading this book about breast cancer.
Yeah, it's
Imagine the
awesome.
looks people are giving me. They're just looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like,
Which
you know
is
what?
stupid. Like you should read whatever you're interested in.
I'm not gonna lie. I was like, she offered to send it to me. Erica was like, "Hey, would you read it?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not? Sure, why not? Why not? What am I
Yeah.
gonna lose by reading it? You know what I
Right.
mean?" And everything like that too. And I was like, "Okay." So I started reading, and I was like, "Man, this is really good." And then these poems she had in there, phenomenal. It was like, "Oh yeah, I
Oh,
really
that's
enjoyed them."
awesome.
So then Erica reveals on the show that these are coming from her own personal journal. She cleaned them
Wow.
up a little bit, she said, but
Sure.
I was like, that's so fucking cool that you put that
Yeah.
in there. And then when you get to the back of this book, I'm gonna tell you there's nothing short of just, oh holy Lord, man. Like she put herself out there. Like there's pictures of right
Wow.
there you could see the aftermath of the stitches on the
Yeah.
sides and things. And I'm just like,
Mm.
holy shit. I'm like, that hurts. Like looking at
Yeah.
it. And it was so great because you could see it through her eyes and the way she's got you completely locked in. Now you're looking at hers, and you watch her rebuild her confidence as she starts rebuilding
Mhm.
what identifies her as a woman, basically.
Sure.
And I'm telling people, like, I'm reading this book, and I'm like, I told one guy this morning on TikTok, I was on talking to a friend of mine, and he was like, I was like, hey man, this is the book I'm reading. He goes, and he's looking at me. I was like, but I'm telling you, you have to read this. It's great. But I recommend this book to anybody that has anybody that deals with cancer and wants a better perspective and idea of what they deal with. It's so great. And Erica said there's a couple husbands that reached out that their wives had cancer, and they said the book helped them understand a lot of things, so they didn't have to overload them with questions and things like that.
Yeah,
So it was so cool to see, though.
that's really neat. And I feel like reading books that, um people don't expect you to read, like, you reading a book about breast cancer. Like, when we read these books by people who are so different from us, it
Yeah.
only expands our empathy, right? It only makes us kinder, better humans. So it's so frustrating to me when people are like, well, I wouldn't read that. Like, well,
Yeah.
why not?
They're just too close-minded,
Yeah.
and it's like just say you don't want to, you can't read. It's okay. Be honest with me. It's
Yeah.
okay. I just like I felt like I was like, she's like, oh, I'll send you a copy. Well, not sure. You're gonna send me a copy. I'm gonna read the damn thing. Might as
Yeah.
well, why the hell not? And let's put the cherry on the cake here. She signed it for me. I literally fell on
Oh,
the floor. I was like, that's so awesome because I told her when I finally get to the point where I have my own studio, I'm gonna put it up on the shelf behind. Like I'm gonna try and have the setup
yeah.
like it'll be behind me and have it be one of the items that are up there. But I'm gonna keep it forever. I'm gonna be honest, with y'all. I
Yeah.
treasure that kind of stuff. When people send stuff like that, sign it. She even signed it, had a nice little message in it. And I was
Yeah.
like, hey, I totally realized, I'm like, hey, listen, just in case y'all be jealous, she signed it for me too. So
That's
how
right.
about that one? So listen, if you want to send me a signed copy too, listen,
Yeah,
it'll go right to the collection. I'd be totally down. I'm telling you. But yeah,
awesome.
I am so interested to read the book. Like I'm so at this point in life, I have this thought. I've adopted this theory. It's like, why not? Just like, why not just go and do it for it? Kind of like Yes Man. He
Yeah,
just kind of said yes to most situations. Like obviously
yeah,
I'm analyzing what I'm saying yes to,
sure.
but why not? Like if I'm gonna read a book and expand my thought process to understand more people's perspectives in life, it's
Yep.
it's like why not? And plus, I have a lot of female listeners too, so why not do it for the ladies?
Yeah,
It's not just for the ladies; it's for the guys to understand things too.
yep.
And it was such a great memoir of how it works, and the fact that the pictures in the back are just so like intense. It was just like wow. It's
Wow.
like she put herself out there. There's
Yeah,
hundreds of millions of people that can see these pictures
yeah,
of her, of her breast, just like as she's rebuilding herself as a person. And
yeah,
it's like she's doing this all, and she was like, yeah, because she kind of said the question when she kept asking people, hey, what does this look like? And it's funny because she's like, no one had any pictures. And she said, when I started showing these pictures to people, it made them feel a little more relieved. Like, okay, now
yeah,
I know what I'm looking at. And
yep,
and it's weird for people not to have pictures. It's like, why not give somebody the idea of what it looks like? You
yeah,
can tell somebody, but the picture gives a better idea of what they're going to be looking at.
yep, yep, for sure.
So, but it's like I said, it was so freaking cool, like, and I got Mia's book in the other room. I haven't read it yet. I told her already. Did a post for her and everything. Literally, I got the book, everything like that. And I'm gonna check it out because it was so crazy because our story started lining up, and I was just like, ooh,
Yeah,
this is weird.
yeah, truly.
And
Yeah,
the
that
weird
is
part is, I'll tell you this part. I won't tell you what city she's in, but she was close to the city where I was when this whole thing was going down too. So not
interesting.
only that, we were so close in vicinity. It was that crazy.
Wow,
So, but
wow.
it's so cool though. But like I said, I do have a couple people spiritual base for you though. I love connecting with
Yeah,
other podcasters and
yeah,
sharing different guests with people and things like that. So it's
that's
so great.
awesome.
When I saw the sucker punch, I'm like, yep, that's it. So how did you come up with the name? That's a phenomenal name though. I love it.
Yeah, I am terrible at naming things.
Oh, I don't
And
know that's
so
fantastic.
anytime I have to name something, I have a whole bunch of people that I start texting. And
There we go. Think
say
tank
like,
engage. Here we go.
yeah, I don't want it to be too serious sounding. I
Yeah.
don't want it to be um I don't want it to be like feminine sounding either, because I feel like a lot of
Okay.
times
Okay.
if it's a woman writer or a woman podcaster, it's automatically assumed like, well, this is just for women, right? Like we were just
Yeah.
talking about with the book, right? And
Yeah.
that's not my personality or who I am. And so I wanted it to have some kind of visceral response to it, like, oh yeah, okay, I know what that's about, right? And so I think I was talking with a friend and I said, how do you describe in a word or two what it feels like when you are just sucker punched by life? And we were
What's
both
that?
like,
Sucker
oh,
punch.
huh, there it is.
Right
That's
there.
it.
There it is. Sucker
Boom, done.
punch.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And
so
so,
cool.
it's kind of evolved over the years of,
Yeah.
just being people telling their stories and having conversations to kind of being a little more focused on depression or grief or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. See,
Um,
that's funny you say it. So Pete versus anxiety. People first question, oh, is it about anxiety? And they're like, no, it's a mental health podcast.
yeah.
What do you mean? And I'm waiting for the grammar Nazis to notice how effed up the logo wording is. I did it on purpose because I'm like, I like chaos. Like the text alone. I'm gonna go find some better typography, obviously, when I update it. But the
Yeah.
picture in the back is actually a picture I sent to my wife. The original picture was when we were dating, she had stylized it in that image right back there. So that's symbolic
Uh-huh.
to me. So that's why I like that. But then the wording, just Pete versus anxiety, just came up. It just hit me one day. It was like Pete versus anxiety. And I just started playing around text. And I was like, it had the real like kind of skinny ones for Pete versus an anxiety and like kind of a bolder text with
Yep.
the line. And it was just like, boom, there we go, man. And
Yep.
it's just taken off since then. Like,
That's great.
I've only been doing this 7 months. Okay.
Okay.
So here's the statistics for you. 7 months. I already have I'm already part of a network. Um, I got reached out within the first I think first week or two when I did it. I put out the idea, asked people about being on the show. I
Okay.
started doing some audio recordings. Now, mind you, come November of last year, I'm already out to July of 2025 with people
Wow.
just Mondays at 2 time slots, 10 and 3 p.m. Okay, end of
Okay.
the year, I hit September. I'm right at September 1st now. Okay, so this is why I
Wow.
start getting into the site, get into Podmatch where I started like, okay, because Alex, the guy who runs the site, had reached out to me all the way
Yeah.
back in August. And I
Yep.
was like, I didn't know if it was a real deal or what it was,
Yeah.
and I was like, all right, well, I'll check it out. And it came up again in another conversation with another guest I had on
Yeah.
right around the time I put my digital calendar up and everything shot off. So now from today till October, I have 151 interviews scheduled ready.
Wow. That's awesome.
So it's like it's crazy because and it just keeps getting bigger. Every time I knock out a few, it's like more just keep signing up. I'm like, okay, well, obviously I've got something here that people
Yeah.
want to talk about. And it's just crazy because one girl I booked one person last night, a lot of people I know, and they're all like, oh, I talk about you all the time. I'm like, that's great, thanks. So like, what are y'all saying? Mean things about me?
Yeah.
And it's so great when you hear people say, oh, Pete, I appreciate what you're doing. And all I'm doing is
Yeah.
creating a space for people to come talk about these things.
Exactly.
And I leave it to a conversation. I try not to go so
Mhm.
like interview like I'll ask questions to get some information from people so they know a little
Sure.
more about yourself and
Yep.
it's been such a great experience. And anybody listening, I appreciate it, guys. I really do. You don't even know. It's so great when people say, "Hey, I was talking about you. I told people about your podcast. I'm gonna come check it out." And things like that. And it's been a journey, man. It's been great. I'm 7 months into this thing. I'm still on a network. I have my own Patreon. I have all these things going on. It's like
That's awesome.
it's crazy, but it's at the same time, it's so surreal though. It's like obviously the conversation's there, and I try to go to live as much as possible on the network because they were like, hey,
Yep.
during the day, we got all this space. I'm like, oh, hey, well, listen, let's just go for it. Why not? Let's do this.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but
That's
I'm
great.
excited to hear though you're gonna get back into action with us. Gotta get
Yeah.
back in the trenches, girl. Come on
That's
now.
right. I know. I'm excited. It's kind of been I've had connected with Alex last year too.
Yeah.
And I just been thinking about, I started as all like conversational interview
Hmm.
kind of things. And then I've done some solo and just kind of figuring out like what is the right
Yeah. Yeah.
um
So exactly what it is.
yeah, right. Figuring out what's the right balance, what's the right structure. And because I like both. Like I think both for the topics that I talk about are really important. And so I think I'm gonna figure out a way to kind of have the the weekly or biweekly episodes be me talking through a spiritual practice. Here's what I've
Yeah.
experienced, here's a story, here's how it went terribly wrong, right? Like, and then here's how you can try it, and then have like a bonus episode of here's me talking with someone about their experience with the spiritual, practice.
Yeah,
And
that'd be so cool
um,
though. I mean, there's a
so
lot of them on there. I'll have to drop you a
yeah,
couple names.
yeah,
Another one I recommend to look up is the emotionally unavailable podcast.
okay,
Melissa runs it. Trust me, it'll be a good fucking time for you. I'm guaranteed. It's a great
great,
fucking. I'll send you the name of hers too.
okay,
She's cool as hell though. She's on Instagram and all that too. And her and I had done an episode together. I went and interviewed her. We were just having a great ass time. But when you get ready to launch again, there is somebody else I do want you to interview with. His name is Rory. He runs the Podcasters Nation. He literally interviews podcasters, and he'll do an interview with you about your show, and it'll be all about you, like a 30-minute interview. And I think it'd be great for you though to get it out there for when he drops it. You can let people hear it and more about
yeah,
the show.
great,
So he does like it's the way he puts it his podcast. He's like for podcasters by podcasters kind of thing like that.
yeah,
Real great guy. So I'll get you linked up with him too. He's a really cool
cool,
guy and stuff
awesome.
like that too. So do you want to go ahead and plug your socials while we're getting close to wrapping up here?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on social media at Becky L. McCoy, and my website is beckylmccoy.com. So it's kind of stupid easy to find me.
It'll all be in the bio down below, guys. Have her
um,
Instagram. Her thread is the
yeah,
same thing.
you know,
Facebook is on there. We got it all, guys.
excellent. And
She just needs a TikTok. That's what she's missing.
well, it's there. It just
Oh,
doesn't. I don't
okay.
use it very often.
Good
Um,
to know.
but yeah, and when the book is ready for pre-orders are like that is what kind of makes or breaks a book is when
Yeah,
people
definitely.
order ahead of time, because that's how the publisher decides not how loved you are, but sort of. And that's kind
Right.
of helps determine if you want to write another book, how getting a contract and whatnot. So
Like I
if you
said,
ever
hats off. I'm excited.
yeah, if you ever have any authors that you really want to support, pre-order their book.
Hmm.
Or if it's not in the budget, you go to the library and ask that they pre-order it, and
Yeah.
that really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Definitely. I agree. Like I
Yeah,
said, and I tell people everything I read and things like that. I have a friend, she does a lot of reading. So I tell her about all the books I have to read and things
I
like
love
that
it.
when I'm reading. So I try to connect. I think you're sleeping on TikTok, honestly. I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of great people. Once you
There-
get into the right genre area,
yeah,
there's so many people out there. They're so fantastic that have
yeah,
same like-minded ideas that you do. And it's
yep,
just all about having fun. Like you can go live and talk to people if you want to, or you can go hang out with some of these other people's lives that do like a lot of mental health
yep.
advocacy and things like that. I can link you up with all those people too. They have a bunch of big rooms where they get together and all these
Oh, cool.
people support all that kind of stuff like that. And it's really great. And like I said, it's awesome. So I got some stuff to send you for definitely some
Awesome.
guests and things like that for sure. Rory, I'll
Sure.
send you his information too. But like I said, he does the Podcast Nation. My episode actually came out in case anybody wants to listen to it. It's on Spotify currently. You'll hear the first interview I've ever done before I even started doing the network. It was actually
Love
that
it.
same day that morning. So me and Rory
Okay.
had got together real early, so that was really fun to do. But yeah, like I said,
Neat.
there's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah. Great.
So I got
Great.
about a couple other ones too. I'll send you a bunch. I'll put it together.
Okay. Love it.
However you want, things like that. I'll figure it out. You're on everything like I am, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
all right, guys, we're gonna wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. Becky, thank you so much for coming. This is awesome. I had a great time.
Yeah. I did
I'm so
too.
excited about the book. Keep me posted so I can let people know when the pre-orders come out. So
Yeah. I will.
I can let them know to get on there and start ordering that for you, and things like that. And guys, you know where to find me. I'm Pete for Exciting and pretty much everything. Facebook all the way down to X. I'm on Spotify all the way down to iHeartRadio. And like I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing. Be kind to somebody. One kind act you can do could save somebody's life or even make their day. I'm Pete for Anxiety, signing up saying, hey, don't ask how your day is. Ask how your mental health is today.